The Echo Box, Chapter 1, The Dust of Decades. The old Victorian home, nestled on a quiet tree-lined street in Savannah, Georgia, was a symphony of peeling paint, creaking floorboards, and the pervasive scent of aged wood and forgotten lavender. For Sarah Miller, a woman now in her late 60s, this house was not merely a dwelling. It was a museum of her past, a silent witness to a life lived, loved, and ultimately profoundly lost. Every antique piece of furniture, every framed photograph on the mantelpiece, every faded wallpaper pattern held an unspoken narrative, a whisper from another time. Sarah had lived alone in the house since her husband, Thomas, passed away 5 years prior. Their life together had been a tapestry woven with shared laughter, quiet companionship, and the unspoken understanding that comes from decades of deep affection. Thomas's absence left a quiet ache, a constant phantom limb of her soul. But the profound wound, the one that had never truly healed, the one that lay buried beneath layers of carefully constructed resilience, was the loss of her daughter, Lily. Lily. Her name itself was a delicate bloom, a fleeting whisper of springtime. Lily, who had vanished without a trace 40 years ago. She was just 8 years old then, a vibrant, curious child with a cascade of fiery red curls and eyes that sparkled with boundless energy. One ordinary afternoon, playing in the neighborhood park just 2 blocks from their home, she simply disappeared. No witnesses, no ransom demands, no body, just silence. A profound, agonizing silence that had swallowed Sarah's heart whole. The police investigation had been relentless, then futile. The years had passed, bringing with them a creeping, insidious grief that devoured the joy from Sarah's life, leaving behind only the husk of existence. The missing persons posters had faded. The search parties had disbanded. The hope had dwindled to a tiny, flickering ember. Her marriage to Thomas, though strong, had strained under the weight of this unbearable sorrow. They had clung to each other, 2 shipwrecked souls on a desolate shore, but the unfillable void of Lily's absence had always been between them. Sarah had long ago ceased actively searching. The pain of dashed hopes, of endless dead ends, had become too much to bear. She had retreated into the comforting routines of her quiet life, finding solace in her garden, in her books, in the gentle rhythm of the tides of the nearby Savannah River. The house, filled with Lily's ghost, had become her sanctuary and her tomb. Today, however, was different. Sarah was finally undertaking the monumental task of clearing out the attic, a space she had avoided for decades. It was a repository of forgotten treasures, of Christmas decorations, of old tax records, and of childhood dreams. And it was where she knew, somewhere among the dusty trunks and cobwebbed boxes, Lily's things still lay. She had put it off for so long, fearing the fresh waves of grief, the agonizing memories that would inevitably surface. But Thomas had always wanted her to do it, to make peace with the past, he gently urged in his final days. As the afternoon light filtered through the grimy attic window, casting long, dancing shadows, Sarah discovered a small, intricately carved wooden chest tucked beneath a pile of old quilts. It was an antique, made of dark, polished mahogany, its surface adorned with delicate floral patterns. It was not familiar. It wasn't a family heirloom, she recognized. It looked exotic, perhaps from an estate sale Thomas had frequented. She opened the chest. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single object, a music box. It was unlike any she had ever seen. It was larger than typical. Crafted from the same dark mahogany as the chest, but inlaid with iridescent mother of pearl, forming a delicate swirling pattern on its lid. The key, a small silver filigree piece, was already inserted into a slot on its side. It looked remarkably well preserved, untouched by the dust of decades. A strange, almost magnetic pull drew her to it. It felt cold to the touch, yet emanating a subtle, inexplicable warmth. A shiver ran down her spine. It was a sense of profound anticipation, a feeling she hadn't experienced in 40 years. With trembling fingers, Sarah slowly, carefully turned the key. The mechanism whirred, a soft, almost imperceptible groan from within the antique mechanism. Then, a single, clear note, like a chime, echoed through the quiet attic. And then, a voice, a child's voice, small, sweet, ethereal, yet undeniably real. It was singing, a simple, familiar lullaby, one Sarah had hummed countless times, a lullaby that only two people in the entire world knew, Sarah and her daughter, Lily. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, stifling a choked sob. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the dusty floor. It was Lily's voice, unmistakable, unchanged by time. The voice she hadn't heard in 40 agonizing years. But how? How could a music box, an inanimate object, hold the living echo of her lost daughter? The dust of decades, it seemed, had concealed a miracle, a terrifying, impossible truth that had just begun to play. The echo box had come alive. Chapter 2. The Impossible Melody. Sarah knelt on the attic floor, the music box playing its impossible melody. Her daughter Lily's voice, sweet and clear, filling the dusty silence. Her mind struggled to reconcile the impossible with the undeniable. 40 years. 40 years of agonizing silence, of unanswered prayers, of a void that had consumed her very soul. And now, this. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Lily's voice continued, pure and innocent, the lullaby a cruel, beautiful phantom. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, not of grief, but of a profound, disorienting shock, a joyous agony. It was undeniably Lily. The slight lisp on the S, the tiny, breathy pause before certain words, the unique cadence of her phrasing. Every mother knows her child's voice better than her own heartbeat, and Sarah knew Lily's. She reached out, her fingers trembling, tracing the intricate mother-of-pearl inlay on the music box. It felt cool, smooth, utterly real. This wasn't a hallucination. This wasn't a dream. This was happening. But how? The music box played through the entire lullaby. Then the mechanism whirred again, a soft click, and the song repeated, over and over. Lily's voice, trapped in time, whispering across the decades. Sarah couldn't move. She simply sat there, listening, letting the impossible melody wash over her. A deluge of raw emotion. Memories, long suppressed, flooded her mind. Lily's red curls, bouncing as she sang. Her wide, curious eyes fixed on Sarah's face, her tiny hand gripping Sarah's finger as they walked to the park. The last time she saw her, the last time she heard her speak. After what felt like an eternity, but was perhaps only minutes, Sarah found the strength to reach for the music box again. She fumbled for the tiny silver key, turning it counterclockwise, stopping the haunting song. The silence that followed was even more profound, more agonizing than the initial 40 years of absence. She examined the music box more closely. It was heavy, intricately crafted. The bottom was covered in a soft velvet, but along one side, almost hidden by the ornate carvings, she found a small, discreet panel. She pressed it. It clicked open, revealing a miniature, almost microscopic speaker and a tiny, almost invisible control panel. Not a traditional music box mechanism at all. This was something else, something technological. Beneath the panel, barely visible, were faint etchings, a series of symbols she didn't recognize, and then a small, stylized logo, Chronos Acoustics, pat-penned. Chronos. The name echoed in her mind. Hadn't Eleanor mentioned a Chronos lens in her adventures at Pinecroft? A device connected to unusual temporal or vibrational phenomena? The thought, though unsettling, offered a glimmer of a plausible explanation for the impossible. Sarah carefully, gingerly, turned the music box over again. The lid was securely shut. No apparent way to open it without damaging the intricate inlay. The silver key was clearly for activating the sound, not winding a mechanism. As she ran her fingers over the mother of pearl, she noticed a faint, almost invisible seam along the edge of the lid, a subtle hairline crack. It was so fine, it was almost imperceptible. She pressed along it, another click. The entire top of the music box, the lid with its delicate inlay, slid smoothly to the side, revealing a hollow compartment beneath. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark, aged silk, were two objects. One was a small, ornate silver locket, its surface tarnished with age. The other was a miniature folded piece of paper. So tiny, it looked like a child's folded note. Sarah carefully unfolded it, her breath hitched. It was a drawing, a child's drawing, a stick figure of a woman with long, flowing hair, holding the hand of a smaller stick figure with wild, scribbled curls. And above them, a sun and a rainbow. And in childish, wobbly letters, "Me and Mommy. I love you." Lily's drawing. She recognized the unique way Lily drew fingers as tiny little lines, like starbursts. And then she saw the date, scrawled in pencil on the back of the drawing, October 27th, 1985, the day Lily disappeared. Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't a pre-recorded message from the past. This wasn't a simple echo. This was a direct link to the day Lily vanished. This music box, this Chronos Acoustics device, contained not just Lily's voice, but a tangible piece of her last moments. It was a terrifying, impossible melody, a silent scream across 40 years. And the truth of Lily's disappearance was not just in the dust of decades, but perhaps trapped within the very heart of this enigmatic box. The impossible melody was beginning to reveal its terrifying score. Chapter 3. The Ghost in the Machine. The child's drawing, dated the very day Lily vanished, coupled with her voice resonating from the Chronos Acoustics music box, plunged Sarah into a profound, chilling disarray. This was no ordinary antique. This was a bridge across 40 years, a terrifying, impossible artifact. Her hands trembled as she clutched the tiny drawing. How could Lily have placed this inside the box on the day she disappeared? Had she carried the music box to the park? Had someone given it to her? The questions swirled, each more agonizing than the last. She focused on the silver locket. It was small, intricately engraved with a single, delicate lily flower. She pressed the clasp. It sprang open, revealing two tiny, perfectly preserved photographs. One was of Lily, smiling, her fiery red curls a vibrant blur. The other was of a man Sarah didn't recognize, dark hair, kind eyes, a gentle smile. He looked vaguely familiar, a fleeting sense of déjà vu, but she couldn't place him. He was not Thomas, nor any relative she knew. And then, the faint inscription on the inside of the locket's lid caught her eye, almost too small to read. For Lily, always, D. Who was D? Sarah's mind raced, searching for connections. The Chronos logo, Eleanor Vance and her Chronos lens. Was there a link? Eleanor had delved into matters beyond ordinary understanding, into the very fabric of time and memory. She remembered Eleanor mentioning her work in Pinecroft, in the Catskills. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead she had for Chronos. She carefully placed the drawing and the locket back into the music box, closing the secret compartment. The box felt cold, heavy, humming with an unseen energy. Days passed in a blur of frantic research. Sarah managed to find Eleanor Vance's contact information through various academic and historical societies. She composed a long, detailed email, carefully recounting her discovery, the music box, Lily's voice, the drawing, the date, the locket, the Chronos Acoustics logo. She knew it sounded fantastical, perhaps even insane, but she included scanned images of the drawing and the locket as proof. The reply came swiftly, from Eleanor Vance. Her tone was cautious, but unmistakably intrigued. She acknowledged the Chronos connection and expressed a profound understanding of the concept of unseen echoes. She agreed to meet immediately. 2 days later, Eleanor Vance, a woman of quiet dignity and piercing intellect, sat in Sarah Miller's Savannah living room. Sarah, a woman who had lived with the ghost of a child for 40 years, recounted her story, holding the music box, her voice trembling with emotion. Eleanor listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When Sarah finished, Eleanor carefully took the music box. She examined it, her scholarly eye missing no detail. She immediately recognized the subtle craftsmanship, the faint energy signature, and the Chronos logo, though it was different from the one on her Chronos lens. "This is not a traditional music box, Sarah," Eleanor confirmed, her voice low and steady. "This is a form of advanced temporal technology, a device designed to capture and play back specific vibrational frequencies from the past. A temporal echo recorder, if you will. It's exceptionally rare and very, very experimental." Sarah gasped. "Temporal echo? So Lily's voice, it's real?" "It is, Sarah. It's a direct recording, a vibrational imprint of her voice, captured at that moment in time. And the drawing, it suggests she was present, perhaps holding the box or placing the drawing inside, just before before she vanished. Eleanor then focused on the locket and the photograph of the unknown man. "This man," Eleanor said, holding the locket closer, "he looks familiar, as you said. The D, could it be a David?" Sarah froze. David. A forgotten memory stirred, a phantom sensation. There had been a man, a scientist, a young, brilliant, yet eccentric scientist, a doctoral student at the university where Thomas had taught. His name was David Albright. He had been a family friend, a frequent visitor. He adored Lily. He was obsessed with theories of time, of capturing moments, of the vibrational essence of memory. He had disappeared shortly after Lily, without a trace, leaving behind only rumors of a nervous breakdown. Thomas had dismissed him as a harmless eccentric, too lost in his theories. "David Albright," Sarah whispered, the name tasting strange on her tongue, heavy with forgotten pain. "He was a friend. He disappeared too, around the same time." Eleanor's eyes widened. "David Albright," she repeated, almost to herself. "I know that name. He was a protege of my own David Sterling's mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch. Finch had theories about temporal resonance, about echoes of consciousness. This box, it might be one of Albright's experimental devices." He was considered a brilliant but unstable genius, and the fact that he too disappeared after Lily, the pieces began to click into place with terrifying speed. David Albright, the eccentric scientist, his obsession with time, his adoration for Lily, this temporal echo recorder, his disappearance, and Lily's voice, trapped in the box, a ghost in the machine, screaming across 40 years. The truth was not just about a missing child. It was about a desperate act, a scientific experiment gone terribly wrong, or a hidden, unthinkable choice. The memory of David Albright, now a chilling key, promised to unlock the most agonizing secret of Lily's disappearance. The impossible melody was about to reveal its true, terrifying score. Chapter 4. The Unseen Strings. The realization that David Albright, Thomas's former student and a family friend, might be directly connected to Lily's disappearance and to this Chronos acoustics music box sent a fresh wave of ice through Sarah's veins. Eleanor Vance, with her vast knowledge of temporal phenomena and her own experiences with the Chronos lens, provided a grounding presence amidst the terrifying implications. David Albright was indeed a brilliant mind. Eleanor explained, her voice grave, but his theories on temporal resonance were considered radical, even dangerous by some in the scientific community. He believed that strong emotional imprints, particularly those linked to moments of profound joy or trauma, could be captured and preserved, creating what he called temporal echoes. He experimented with vibrational frequencies with devices he hoped could make these echoes audible, visible. Sarah clutched the music box. "So, Lily's voice, it's an echo from the day she disappeared." "Precisely," Eleanor affirmed, "and the drawing placed inside the box suggests a direct connection. Perhaps Lily was with him, playing with the device, at the moment of her disappearance, or perhaps he activated it, intentionally or accidentally, capturing her last conscious moments." The thought was agonizing. Was Lily's last experience terror? Was this music box a witness to a crime? Eleanor, ever the methodical scholar, suggested they try to find any remaining records of David Albright's work, any papers, any hidden labs, She knew his mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch, had kept meticulous records, even of his more controversial students. Their search began with archived university records, old faculty files, and then, more obscure, scientific journals from the 1980s. They discovered that David Albright had indeed published a few obscure, highly theoretical papers on temporal resonance and vibrational imprints shortly before his disappearance. His research had been largely dismissed as fringe science, but a few footnotes referenced a private lab, an old, abandoned textile mill outside Augusta, Georgia, where he conducted his more unconventional experiments. The old mill, long abandoned, was a skeleton of brick and broken windows. Sarah and Eleanor approached it with a mixture of dread and desperate hope. The air was thick with dust, the smell of damp earth and decay. Inside, amidst the rubble and forgotten machinery, they found a small, reinforced room, clearly Albright's private lab. It was a chaotic scene: overturned tables, shattered glass, rusted equipment. But amidst the wreckage, a single, sturdy steel cabinet stood relatively intact. Eleanor, with her practical resourcefulness, managed to pry it open. Inside, carefully preserved, were several leather-bound journals, covered in Albright's frantic, often illegible handwriting, interspersed with complex mathematical equations and circuit diagrams. And on the bottom shelf, nestled in a padded compartment, a single, unassuming cassette tape, labeled in Albright's precise hand, Experiment Log Final. Eleanor, her heart pounding, inserted the tape into a portable player she had brought. The static cleared, and then David Albright's voice, surprisingly clear, filled the desolate lab. He spoke of his obsession with capturing pure resonance, with creating a device that could access moments in time. He detailed his experiments, his failures, his near breakthroughs. And then he spoke of Lily. October 27th, 1985, the pinnacle. Lily was here today. Her laughter, pure resonance. I've been refining the echo box, trying to capture emotional imprints. She loved it, played with it, sang her lullaby, her mother's song. It's perfect, the perfect anchor. Sarah gasped, her breath catching in her throat. An anchor? Albright's voice grew more agitated, more frenzied. But then, the surge, an unforeseen variable. The Chronos field, it overloaded. A temporal rift. Small, contained, but she was too close. The box, it pulled her in. She's gone. Into the echo. Into the past. I saw her. Just for a moment. Her little hand, reaching. Gone. Sarah screamed, a guttural sound of pure agony. Lily, pulled into a temporal rift, into the past. Not abducted, not dead, but lost in time. Albright's voice became a desperate sob. I followed her. I had to. I created a larger temporal device, a Chronos portal. I know the coordinates. I can bring her back. I have to. She's not lost, just displaced. I'm going in to bring her home, for Sarah, for Thomas, for Lily. The tape ended abruptly. A chilling silence filled the room. Lily wasn't abducted. She was a victim of a scientific experiment gone terribly wrong. And David Albright, the eccentric scientist, hadn't simply disappeared. He had gone after her, into the past, into the unknown. The man in the locket, D, was David Albright. He hadn't abandoned her. He had loved her. He had tried to save her. Sarah slumped against the grimy wall, tears streaming down her face, a complex mixture of unbearable grief and a desperate, terrifying surge of hope. Lily was not gone forever. She was simply somewhere else, in the past, and David Albright had gone after her 40 years ago. The music box, the echo box, was not just a record of her voice. It was a testament to a desperate act of love, a portal to an unimaginable truth. The unseen strings of fate, of science, and of love had finally revealed their horrifying yet compelling tune. The ghost in the machine was not a ghost at all. It was Lily, crying out from across the vast, terrifying expanse of time. And Sarah, against all odds, now had a path, however perilous, to find her. Chapter 5: The Uncharted Journey Back. The revelation from David Albright's final log tape was a seismic shock, yet it also brought a terrifying, fragile hope that had been extinguished for 40 years. Lily wasn't gone. She was displaced, lost in time. And David Albright, consumed by guilt and an impossible love for the child, had followed her. Sarah, despite her advanced years, felt a surge of energy she hadn't known she possessed. Grief had given way to a fierce, unyielding determination. She had to find Lily. Eleanor, her scholarly curiosity now deeply entwined with a profound sense of compassion for Sarah, immediately understood the implications. This Chronos portal, if it existed, and if Albright managed to activate it, it would have been a monumental undertaking and incredibly dangerous. They returned to Albright's journals. The later entries, even more frenetic, detailed his attempts to stabilize the Chronos field, to pinpoint Lily's temporal coordinates. He spoke of a temporal anchor, a device that would allow him to follow her precisely, and he referenced the echo box repeatedly as the key, the very anchor itself, the emotional imprint strong enough to guide him. "She's in 1945, Albright had scrawled in one entry, barely legible. "London, the Blitz, the coordinates are unstable, but she is there. I see her. A child, alone. I must go." London, 1945, the end of World War II. The time Eleanor's own mother, Lillian, had been there, working for the OSS, meeting Samuel Peterson. The irony, the impossible coincidence, was staggering. Was fate pulling these threads together, leading Sarah towards a hidden truth that would intertwine with Eleanor's own complex history? Eleanor immediately recognized the dangers. Temporal travel, even if possible, is fraught with peril. It violates the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them, and Albright's notes are fragmented. The portal he built would be incredibly unstable. But Sarah was resolute. "I don't care about the danger, Eleanor. My daughter is out there, lost, and if there's a chance, any chance, to find her, I have to take it." Eleanor, after much deliberation, agreed to help. Her own experience with the Chronos lens and the mysteries of time had instilled in her a belief that some boundaries of science were merely waiting to be stretched. She consulted with David Stirling, her first love and now confidant, a brilliant scientist himself, who was intrigued and deeply concerned by Albright's theories. Together, they began to piece together Albright's complex diagrams, attempting to understand the mechanics of the Chronos portal and the echo box as a temporal anchor. Albright's lab was a wreck, but Eleanor, with David Stirling's remote guidance, found schematics for a larger, more powerful device hidden behind a false wall. It was massive, clearly unfinished, but the theoretical framework was there. It was a temporal projector designed to open a localized, controlled temporal rift. The challenge was immense. Rebuilding and stabilizing such a device, even theoretically, was decades beyond current technology. But Albright had done it, or nearly. As Eleanor and David delved deeper into Albright's chaotic notes, they discovered a crucial piece of information. Albright hadn't just intended to go into the past. He had theorized about temporal feedback loops, ways to send information, even objects, back to the present once a stable connection was made. He was building a two-way system. The echo box, he believed, would be the primary link, capable of receiving as well as transmitting echoes. This meant the music box was not just a recorder, it was potentially a receiver, a conduit. One evening, back at Sarah's Savannah home, as Eleanor was meticulously cleaning the echo box, a faint, almost imperceptible light pulsed from the tiny speaker panel. Then, a new sound. Not Lily's voice, but a distorted, crackling whisper, almost like static, but with an underlying rhythm. Eleanor adjusted the hidden controls Albright had built into the box. The static cleared, and a male voice, muffled but familiar, emerged. It was David Albright. "Sarah, can you hear me? It's David. I found her. She's safe. But the portal collapsed. I'm trapped. In 1945, London. The blitz is overwhelming, but she's safe. She's with a good family, a nurse. She calls her Lily. Please, Sarah, tell Thomas. Tell him she's safe. And tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I'll tried. And tell Eleanor about the coordinates. The Chronos lens, it holds the key to bringing me back. And Lily. But the anchor, the music box, it needs to be with her. She never lets it go. She knows it's from you, from home." The voice faded, replaced by static, then silence. Sarah collapsed into a chair, tears of shock and relief streaming down her face. Lily was safe, and David, he was alive. Trapped, but alive. He had saved her. He had kept his promise, and he had sent a message. Across 40 years, using the very echo box that had tormented her, Eleanor, though stunned, immediately focused. "He's telling us how to bring them back, Sarah. The Chronos lens, it holds the key. And the echo box, it needs to be with Lily in the past. It's the anchor. He's telling us he succeeded in bringing her to safety, and he's still with her, protecting her. He found a good family. The uncharted journey back had just begun. But it wasn't just about finding Lily. It was about rescuing David Albright, a man who had sacrificed his entire life, his very existence, to correct a terrible mistake. It was about completing the selfless act begun by a brilliant, desperate scientist, bringing two souls back across the vast, terrifying expanse of time, guided by the unseen strings of a mother's love and the impossible echoes of a child's song. Chapter 6: The Resonance of Return. The revelation of David Albright's message, spanning 40 years and the vast chasm of time, transformed Sarah's grief into a burning resolve. Lily was safe, and David, her selfless rescuer, was alive, trapped in 1945 London. The echo box, a relic of agonizing loss, was now a beacon of hope. Eleanor, her academic rigor fueled by profound empathy, dedicated herself to unraveling Albright's final, desperate notes. David Sterling, remotely assisting from Pinecroft, was captivated by the sheer audacity of Albright's temporal mechanics, even as he cautioned extreme prudence. The key, Albright had stated, lay in the Chronos lens, Eleanor's own artifact, a device she had used to perceive temporal distortions. not to initiate them. Albright's journals, deciphered painstakingly by Eleanor and David, revealed his final, terrifying theory. The Chronos lens, in conjunction with the echo box, which acted as a temporal resonance amplifier, could create a targeted, albeit fleeting, temporal vortex. The vortex wouldn't be a portal for physical travel, but a momentary breach in the fabric of time, allowing for a precise, instantaneous retrieval. The challenge was pinpointing the exact coordinates in time and space for Lily and David. Albright's last message had given them the year, 1945, and the location, London. But London in 1945 was a city in flux, scarred by the Blitz, teeming with millions. They needed a more precise temporal signature, a strong echo from Lily's specific location. Eleanor revisited Albright's earlier notes about emotional imprints. The echo box had captured Lily's lullaby, a profound emotional anchor. Albright believed the device, when powered by a unique temporal energy source, could act as a homing beacon. The deeper the emotional connection to the imprint, the stronger the pull. Sarah, remembering Thomas's careful archiving of Lily's childhood, began searching through old family photos, videos, and Lily's own drawings. She found a faded photograph of Lily standing in a small London park, dated 1985, taken during a family vacation. A random, happy memory. But then she noticed something in the background, a distinctive, ornate lamppost and a unique iron gate, a specific location. Eleanor, using her extensive knowledge of London history, managed to identify the park, Regent's Park, and the exact spot where the lamppost and gate stood in 1945. This was it, a precise geographical anchor. The next challenge was power. Albright's notes spoke of a massive energy surge needed for the Chronos portal. A smaller, more precise vortex would still require an immense, focused burst of temporal energy, far beyond conventional means. David Stirling, intrigued by the sheer brilliance of Albright's theoretical physics, despite his reckless application, offered a solution. He had access to a highly experimental, high-energy particle accelerator at a secure, undisclosed facility, a device capable of generating precisely the kind of controlled, focused energy burst Albright had theorized. It was a long shot, incredibly risky, but it was their only chance. The plan was audacious. Eleanor, with the Chronos lens, would stand in Regent's Park at the exact coordinates. The echo box, resonating with Lily's voice, would be placed at her side, acting as the temporal anchor. At a precise moment, synchronized to the historical record of 1945 London, the particle accelerator would unleash a focused burst of temporal energy, creating the momentary vortex. The echo box, sensing its anchor, would pull Lily and David from that very spot in 1945 directly back to the present. The stakes were terrifyingly high. A miscalculation could scatter them through time, or worse, annihilate them. But Sarah's resolve was unwavering. On a cold, clear night in December, exactly 40 years to the day after Lily vanished, Sarah and Eleanor stood in Regent's Park. The echo box, now fully charged by a carefully crafted power source built by David Stirling, pulsed with a faint, almost musical hum. The Chronos lens, held by Eleanor, felt strangely warm in her hands. At precisely 11:37 p.m., the exact time of the temporal surge Albright recorded, Eleanor activated the Chronos lens. A shimmer, like heat waves, rippled through the air in front of them. The echo box began to glow, and Lily's lullaby, crystal clear, poured from its tiny speaker radiating outward, a beacon across time. The air crackled. A profound, almost unbearable pressure built in the atmosphere. The scent of ozone filled the night. Then, a blinding flash of emerald light, followed by a sound like tearing fabric. And then, they were there, standing disoriented in the shimmering air. Two figures. A man, disheveled, older than his photograph, but unmistakably David Albright holding a small, terrified child, Lily. 40 years older, but still unmistakably her. Her fiery red curls now long and tangled, her blue eyes wide with shock and confusion, but safe, unharmed. She was wearing clothes that looked strangely old-fashioned, but whole. Sarah screamed her daughter's name, a sound ripped from the deepest part of her soul. Lily! Lily's head snapped up. Her eyes met Sarah's. Recognition slowly dawning, erasing the 40 years of separation. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice a little older, a little deeper, but still Lily. David Albright, pale and gaunt, slumped to his knees, still clutching Lily. "Sarah," he gasped, his voice hoarse. I brought her back." He looked at Eleanor, then at the Chronos lens. You did it. You finished it." The temporal vortex closed with a soft sigh. The cold night air returned, but the world was forever changed. Lily was home, and David Albright, the selfless scientist, had completed his 40-year mission. The reunion was beyond words. Lily, though older, still clung to Sarah like the 8-year-old child she had been. She recounted fragments of her life in 1945 London. The kind nurse who took her in, the bombing raids, the strange man who always stayed close, silently protecting her. She remembered the lullaby, the music box, a constant comfort, a familiar echo in a terrifying, unfamiliar world. David Albright, once rehabilitated, explained his incredible, harrowing journey. He had indeed found Lily, left at an orphanage in the chaos of wartime London. He had watched over her, a silent guardian angel, fearing that any direct interference would unravel the timeline further. He had been waiting, agonizingly, for the Chronos lens to activate, for the echo box to call them back. He spoke of his profound guilt, his unwavering love for Lily, and his decades of solitary perseverance in the past. The echo box, the simple music box, had been the true heart of the miracle. It had not just played a forgotten melody. It had been the resonant thread, the emotional anchor that spanned 40 years, connecting a mother's undying love to a lost child and pulling them back home through the very fabric of time. The 65-year secret, born of disappearance, had culminated in an impossible, breathtaking reunion, a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and the unseen strings that bind us across time. The resonance of return had brought Lily home.